Who are we? Roger, are you here?
I am.
All right. DS, you here?
I'm here.
Who's that weird guy in the corner?
I thought that was like Top Gun or something for a second.
Yeah.
Must have been that guy in the corner.
Yeah, so I think we are the what are we, the Willy watchers? We're watching Willy.
Wiley.
Bob.
Wiley. And then Wiley Coyote.
I can't support the Willy watchers.
You're gonna get me demonetized, dude.
You're gonna do that without my help.
We are the Wily Watchers. You say it with the right cadence. It's not so bad.
Okay. The Wily Watchers. That's not bad.
So that should work. We have with us, as always, of course, Metarog. Say greetings, everyone.
Greetings, everyone. Great to be here, as always.
And DS, say hey, everybody.
Yeah, what's up?
And our special guest this evening, we have King of Comicdom, Lawrence from the now formerly and newly defunct Go To Geeks. Go ahead and say hello there, Lawrence.
Hello there, Lawrence.
I can tell he's
falling right in line here.
Yes,
Who's getting the phone call?
Probably Bub.
Addiction.
Collection's coming in.
Yeah,
well, I better answer that for him.
Hey, Bob, I want to congratulate you before this changes either up or down. But you have...
I wish it would.
666 subscribers.
Oh, goodness.
Wow.
Look at that. Mark of the beast.
Somebody better subscribe to him pretty quick.
That's his persona on Tony Sanders, the Beast. So it's how appropriate. Mark of the Beast from the Revelation.
Of the Beast. In the house.
Of course, it's a different type.
He lost his title. I'm kind of thankful for that because it was exhausting.
Because you got to go back on if you win, right?
Yeah, and I didn't know. Like the first time I won, I was like, "Hey, I won." And he's like, "All right, great. So we'll see you in 2 weeks." I was like, "What?" He's like, "You gotta come back on," and it was fun, but it's like physically exhausting. I had a headache the next day, and I was sore from all the screaming and yelling and acting like a fool. So. It was rough.
Well, that happens to the rest of us, Bub. When you go full throttle out the gate, it's hard to maintain that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was fun. I had a good time. I would do it again, but I'm glad not to have to do it again for a while. So, and I know they want me on something else, Slab Down or something. So that's like an alternative group of people who have won the show before. So I'm excited for that. So, and that will be for like another month or two.
Alternative group of people?
Yes, we're alternative.
So they're not actual people. They're an alternative group of people.
No, it's when the regular people drop out, we step in.
Okay,
the designated
alternates. Kind of like a clone, system or something. Because he said alternative people. I was like, okay, that's
Body Snatchers.
That Comicgory.
Yeah, Body Snatchers. There we go.
That Comicgory show. I want to try to get on there. That looks real fun.
It was fun. Now I am the current champion on that show. Currently, the reigning champion, raining down hard. That's a lot of fun.
Bub did well. Yeah. I was supposed to go on.
NYC says I took that hunt championship from Bub. Just saying, he did take it. He was set up to take it. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, the fix was in. They brought him in at the last minute. He got to show. I knew I was going to lose anyway. Once he told me the day I was coming on, I was like, wait a minute. So I'm going to go up against people that have been to New York City Comic Con. I haven't bought a comic in like a month. I'm trying to save up, So I knew I was going to lose real bad. And I did. It was pathetic. It's a sorry showing. Well, tonight we are the Wily Watchers. Wily, yes. We're the Wily Watchers. And the reason we chose that is because our topic, we chose it. Our topic is is comic knowledge access. So access to accessible comic knowledge that's obviously everywhere. We'll talk about all the different places you can get that knowledge, right? a little bit as well, but also just how that's changed the hobby over the years. How is that transition from, we'll call them the dark days when, and I think Roger's always trying to remind us of the dark days, because those are the days when he had to work so hard. What? Well, that's true. That's true. I'm not talking about like the 30s or anything. I'm just saying, back before we had all these modern conveniences and information at our fingertips, you had to kind of do the legwork. So that's what I want to talk about a little bit tonight, is the differences between then and now, and kind of which one do you prefer? So since I mentioned him a bunch already, we'll go ahead and start with DS. The old switcheroo.
Well, this is a topic I think about a lot, and it's of great interest to me. And I'm not a scholar in this area, but I like to think about the history, not just the history of the books, but the history of the sort of the hobby and collecting. And this is just it seems to me there's two certain tracks to this. One is the availability of information and how we learn about the comics and the hobby. But even before that, there's a point where comics became collectible. Prior to them being considered collectible, there was no really need or desire for the information because nobody cared about them. They were throwaways for kids, and they stuck them in your back pocket. You read them at school and tried not to get caught and whatever. And, in the 60s and especially in the early 70s, comics started to become collectible to a small group of people that has grown exponentially over the decades. But initially, when they became collectible, you saw some, there were some small cons and meetings from what I hear back, in the 60s and early 70s. And then it really started to take off as time went on. But, there were started to be these cons, these gatherings of people who were collecting comics and saw value in them and were searching out certain ones. And I think that is really the start of the gathering of information about comics as a collectible hobby. And from there, that spurred on very shortly after that era, sort of the Overstreet Price Guide came out. And that's, I don't buy it anymore, but that's more than just a price guide. I find the prices, initially it was very helpful with the prices. They were spot on. And that was what you went by for prices. But more than that, related to what we're talking about, the Overstreet Guide is a wealth of information about keys, about dates, about artists, just a wealth of information. And that's really the first combined source where everything sort of was in one place, was the Overstreet Guide. And I think the first one was like 70 or 71, something like that.
1970.
70, okay, yeah. After that, there really wasn't much other than just more collectors coming into the hobby, more gatherings of people, newer and revised editions of the Overstreet Guide. And Roger probably knows way more about this than me, and he can fill in the blanks. But the next thing that comes to my mind, really from there, for about 20 years, there's nothing until the Gerber Guides came along, which I only recently got a copy of, but those are a wealth of information about Golden Age comics only. So, I'm going to gloss over that sort of, but those came out prior to the internet. And then there's the new era in the history of the earth, which is the internet. And I remember in high school, yeah, and in high school, I graduated in 1994. That'll tell you how old I am, basically. But there was no internet when I was in high school. But when I graduated, that was essentially the time the internet became a thing. And ever since then, it's just been an explosion of availability of information on everything, including comics. So that, people like, older collectors, more traditional collectors who have this wealth of knowledge are now competing with people who can gain an almost unlimited amount of knowledge almost instantly overnight, but they don't really have the experience or the wisdom to go with it. And that's caused some really weird ups and downs and changes in directions in the comic market, because before it was pretty steady and you had to work hard, you had to have experience, you had to know what you're doing, you had to be immersed in it for a long time to gain knowledge and experience. Now you go on the internet and find anything, but you don't necessarily have that experience. A lot of younger collectors just find stuff on the internet. And this has given a huge explosion to books coming out of nowhere and jumping like crazy and dropping like crazy, and an explosion of all sorts of different things because information is at everybody's fingertips. Is it good or bad? I don't know. It certainly has sort of a weird effect on the hobby when people can just jump in the hobby and overnight learn anything about anything in the hobby and apply it without having any experience or wisdom about the hobby. And I'm not the most experienced or wise, but I have a little bit of both, and so I sort of see the value in both. But information is just being flooded out there on the internet. You can find it, but it's how are collectors and people in the hobby applying it? Not always for the best for the hobby, and a lot of collectors lose their place very quickly. I don't know. It's interesting. So I don't know where it's going to go, but that's some random stream of consciousness from me on it, and I'll pass on to the next person.
I think that's really important information. I think that when you talk about each of the different levels that it's kind of moved into, it definitely gets broader and broader to where people, because even if you were going to go for a comic guide or the Gerber guides, you still already had to be in some sort of community environment to know that those even existed, and that was something that was going to help you to be a more complete collector or whatever your collecting goals were. You had to know that was something that was going to help. You had to be told. So there was still a lot of word of mouth. Of course, there's some advertising, but I think for the most part, the internet is it's pushed upon you a little bit more these days, Big Line Cat's making a big point. A lot of great points in here tonight so far. I appreciate that. Wizard magazines, there were magazines targeted at kids. Because when you talk about like Gerber guides and the price guide, those are probably more targeted at adult collectors. But there was also things like, of course, Wizard magazine, and then you had Marvel Age, and you had the publisher specific attempts to inform, and then you had the community at large and kids specifically. And Roger, you've talked a lot about the influence that the Guide to the Marvel Universe and things like that had on you as well. Yeah. You wanna share some of your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, DS did a pretty good job of encapsulating the sort of timeline there. I'll add a few things that I remember as a kid, and I think Michael Dodd mentioned the Buyer's Guide to Comics Fandom, and that was sort of a way that was a way that we could actually exchange information, albeit through snail mail, on a regular basis. And that was how you would also be able to pick up comics that you couldn't find locally. And they also had articles that gave you information about appearances, key comics, what comics are back then. You say getting hot, but that are being sought after at any point in time. And we also had a Rocket Blast comic collector, which was, and various other fanzines that weren't necessarily targeted at the financial aspects of the market, but at the collector's aspect of the market. And in that sense, people were looking for example, if you're looking for Frazetta art, there were fanzines that focused on artists, on writers, on Golden Age, Silver Age, etc. So there were fountains of information out there, but I think, Bub, you mentioned that they weren't readily available to, the average, collector. I mean, you had to have some kind of connection, or you had to be immersed in some kind of information highway, whether it be through advertising, or if you were lucky enough to have a local shop that had comics. Now, my first comic book shop, I didn't see it until 1977. So wow. That was when I first started getting connected, and I was very young at that point. So it was very tangential and very superficial, just on the surface. In other words, I would talk to the shop owner, and they would give me sometimes, hey, a convention in New York, happened, and Neil Adams is going to start a comic company or something, et cetera, et cetera. But the big thing that I remember that sort of moved the needle was when we started getting there was a magazine called Comic Book Marketplace that started in I want to say very early 90s. And that was when the financial aspects of the market became very apparent to me, because they had actual sales reports. Now, Overstreet had those too, but this came out every month. And so at that point, things were starting to jump a little quicker than a yearly. And that's why you have these kind of magazines here that Overstreet tried to put out on a quarterly basis back in the early 90s to sort of compete with those types of magazines that are now talking about the financial movement of comics. And some of them moved in 3 months quite a bit, sometimes 100%. So there were information avenues back then, but they were very slow. They were very primitive. They weren't necessarily accurate. And certainly, they weren't available to everybody unless you were really deep into the hobby or had some kind of connection that led you to the information or the access of information. But of course, as Dia said, once the internet came, everybody has access to everything. I was talking to Lawrence about this earlier, that, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing, because they may know the same things that we know, but they don't realize or know that the trends that we have followed years and years and years as collectors, and that some things are fly by night and some things are rock solid, investments like real estate, that if you invest in real estate, more than likely you're not going to lose money. But if you invest in stocks, you have high risk, high reward. So the comics in that sense are similar, but you have to have that wisdom. I think Dia said that, behind it, to know what comics or what type of comics and characters are in for the long run, and which ones you're just speculating on, and you just may drop like a just like something off a building. But once the internet came on, everybody had access to it, and then starts the speculation market, and then starts not the collector market, but then the investment market. And that is where I'm saying the dangerous part is, because that now the collector is sort of being priced out, and the investor is being more, shall we say, more at the forefront of that knowledge.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it has changed quite a bit too. I think that instead of it just being comic fans who are, I don't know, I guess when you think of the term hobby, the purest form of the term hobby should be something done in your spare time, in your leisure time, not your working time, right?
Correct.
And I think that for the greater amount of time, the bulk of the comic knowledge was held by people who truly used this as a hobby, and who spent their time enjoying the stories, learning everything they could about the characters out of pure love for the material, and for the hobby itself. Even if they weren't collectors, maybe they're just people who read all the time and then passed the books along. They were still aware, familiar with the characters and the stories, and they soaked it up. And I would agree. Now it seems that there's a large amount of that knowledge that has shifted to the people that are more investors, the people that are flippers. They're keeping their finger on the pulse closely, because it's money, and it's less of a hobby at that point, as far as the pure definition of the word goes. And it's now more of a second job or a side hustle, as they say these days, right? So it's more of that. And so there's a great wealth of knowledge now being held in that community. And it's almost like comic collector's knowledge versus an investment collector's knowledge, in order for the comic collector to come out with a book that he wants at a reasonable price. So I agree. I think that's a change,
Yeah.
So, Lawrence, what do you think? What do you got going on down there in the bottom corner? What's mulling and a creeping in your head?
Oh, I'm kind of agreeing with everybody, but being that I'm like Roger and from the Dark Ages, this was always my my reference info for everything is one of these.
Oh yeah.
And you know, and then I always did this because I never, you know, the internet's awesome. You can figure out anything, like you said, anytime, quick. But I'm not an investor. I'm a collector. So all I want to know is if I'm getting a good deal on it, like he was talking about. And to me, it's drove prices up of books. That's you know, and I think this started back in the day, just like right here. You know, prototypes. I think that was just kind of something to drive a price of a book up and make it desirable. Because this is a prototype of the Human Torch. And I mean, I guess I never really truly cared that, you know, you had to pay more for it. I just always wanted to complete my set and wanted to learn as much as I can about the artist and the stories. That was all I was ever interested in. And now with the internet, I can go on there and tell you who drew this, which you know what I'm saying, or who wrote it, what year it was published, and how much it's going for at most places. And eBay is another one of them things that you throw in the mix. That's really changed everything. Because the comics like this that I couldn't find when I was a kid are now readily accessible. All you do is push a buy now button and you got it. That's where I'm at on it.
Certainly for access to comics, you know, the internet has been a boon because you can have access to comics that before you had to hunt through, you know, Lawrence, we had to hunt through these grungy old dungeons of bookstores and comic book shops and antique malls and flea markets and freezing cold in the morning. And now the access to comics are much easier or much more comfortable for sure.
It's like the first comic shop I ever visited in my town. It was a record shop, and I walked in there, and that's how I discovered the price guide, because the guy was sitting there looking through it, and he would take a pencil and mark on the back of the pages what he was selling the book for, and he was marking like 5 and 10 cents on most of them, and he was getting all of his information from here because, like you say, it was the snail age, and that's what got me interested in this. When the internet age started, I was one of the last people to jump on the bandwagon because I figured I could still get it the way I wanted to, and I was still only, as personally for myself, I was only still interested in collecting runs. And investment was never, and I can see that you can make a ton of money if you're going to be a flipper or whatever you call it. But I'm just old school from the Dark Ages.
Yeah, and
Lawrence, remember to put a comment here in the chat, because I don't know if everybody knows that you got a new channel.
Let me try that.
And so they can sub you up, because I think, Bub, it's time to acknowledge the chat here, don't you think?
Yes, Roger, I do think on occasion, but it hurts. I got to tell you. And then you start smelling smoke and bacon, and it's just not good. Actually, the smell of bacon I quite enjoy. But anyway, yes, I was just letting Lawrence finish his train of thought. Remember, we have a guest today, Roger, so it's a little longer to get to the chat shout-outs. But yes, please go right ahead and shout out the chat before anybody leaves.
Speaking of our guest, this is Lawrence, formerly of the Go-To Geeks, or that are currently on hiatus. And he's starting a new channel, King of Comicdom, and he's going to have a little bit of a different spin on things. He's already had I think, 2 videos, Lawrence? Or yeah, 2 videos, right?
Well, just kind of a teaser promo, and then
a haul,
some pickups, some stuff I picked up. Yeah,
right. But he's gonna have some interesting stuff coming up, because you know I talk to Lawrence all the time, so you know he throws some stuff around me, and and I say, oh, that's going to be good because his collection is top notch. But so everybody hit the King of Comicdom little icon and sub him up, because you're going to want to see what he's got coming up in the coming weeks. We have got an all-star and big chat in here today. So let's get into it. Just coming in through the door, Ben Compton. Michael Dodd has just been killing it with his videos of monster mags and comics. You got to check it out. His collection is, Lawrence, really good. You're going to like it. It's all runs. Okay. The Gray Man is here all the way from East London. Man from Beantown is here from, I'm assuming, Boston. Library of Comics, Chad from Atlanta. Big Lion Cat, the New Yorker. Biggie Shack, Ohio. Another Ohio guy, Lawrence, is in here. Broke Cause of Comics is in here. I love that name. I'm not broke because of comics. I am just lessened because of comics. But I get you. Gretzky is in here. The Archie collector extraordinaire. Box Hype is in here. That's a new channel. I just subbed you up. Welcome. We are honored to have you here. Let's see who else we got coming up here. I know that Tim the Comic Collector is in here. With his two lovely girls. I'm sure that he's taking care of at home. And DS is here, of course. Perry Comics is lurking in here. He says, sup. Coffee, New York, NYC, Comic Books NYC, the Vanquisher of the Beast is here. Splash Page Comics. I think that's Mr. White Gloves, right? Splash Page?
Yep. That's right.
And we also have Thomas Wayne, Batman's dad's in here. How you doing, Thomas? And let's see who else is in here. Did I miss anybody? We don't have Area 51 in here?
Nope. He must be off tonight playing with the grandkids. We got Box Hype. Did you get him?
Yeah, I just said I haven't seen him before. I subbed him up. And again, everybody, if you don't recognize somebody in this chat, sub them up. Let's give them a chance. Let's support those that support us. From Heroes to Icons in here. My buddy over there, Jason, great stuff on YouTube. Is Bigglesworth Doug, the man who sent me that great Perez AOK. I don't even want to talk about that because I'll start cracking up there. Dawn's in here. Werewolf by Lunchtime, all the way from Perth, Australia. Thank you for joining us. What a loyal follower of the chat. And I think that's everybody, Bub.
Thank you so much. I hated to ask you to do that, but I'm glad you.
It is an honor to do that. You don't.
Yeah, well, I was going to address the whole collector versus speculator, flipper, investor aspect. If people want to hear about that,
we sure don't. So tell us, Lawrence. Oh yeah, we want to hear about it.
Well, I'll tell you, I think on this panel. The three of you are certainly far more a collector than investor, speculator, stuff like that. Bub has a little bit of it because he hustles and flips and works money to get his books. I do the same, but at this point, I'm more of more of what I do is flipping. I don't really speculate, but I consider myself more of an investor / dealer, sort of, not like a big time comic book dealer, but I deal and buy and sell and flip and invest. That's the reason that's sort of become such a huge part of the hobby. And by hobby, I mean anybody who's in comics for whatever reason. That's such a big part of the hobby these days is not because all of a sudden people realize they're worth money or all of a sudden there's movies. It really has nothing to do with any of that stuff. But in any type of market, you need, lots of things, but you need information, a way to exchange information quickly, and, a way to communicate and trade value in the market pretty quickly. When the internet came along, that's really the best way to do that with comics because, there was dealers before there was the internet. And there was people flipping comics and people buying lots and selling them. That was going on before, but to a smaller degree, it was mostly collectors in the hobby. But with the internet, the speed at which information can travel and the speed at which transactions can be consummated has grown to such a huge rate because of the internet that it has allowed the investing part of the hobby to really explode. It was there before, but it was hampered by a lack of a way to exchange information quickly and value quickly. But with the internet, that happens so quickly now that really that's much easier to do, and it really has exploded the flipping market and the trading, the buying, the selling, the speculating. A lot of people see this as being bad for the hobby. You know, it's always been part of the hobby. It's certainly not bad for the hobby, and in fact, I think it's good for the hobby. But you know, when you have enough people who are able to effectively buy and sell these commodities, these works of art on the open market and make profit off it, it encourages them to do so. It really makes far more books available on the market for everyone than has ever been available ever in the history of comics. You know, like Lawrence was saying, you know, if he wants those Strange Tales now to fill a run, you go on eBay, buy it now, done deal. You know, that's because the investing market has become much easier and much more efficient. And, you know, that's a good thing. The prices go up, but, you know, if that's a supply and demand issue, that's not really have anything to do with speculators or flippers. We're not causing the prices to skyrocket out of control. You know, people there's a demand for things, which is also spurred on by the availability and the internet and everything. But, you know, the prices are secondary, but the ability to invest and buy and sell and trade in the market it's very efficient now because of the internet. So that's really exploded, and really we're all in a better place because there's so much information and so many books available. It's really like the sky is the limit. It's just your creativity, your passion, your imagination is the only thing that limits the type of collection you want to have. There was a lot of limits before, but now I feel like it's, you know, whatever you want to do with your collection, you can do from the comfort of your own home. So, you know, that's just sort of a rambling take on that. But, you know, I really enjoy the flipping part of the hobby as much as the collecting part of the hobby. But the collecting part of the hobby, I feel like you can do that without the internet. It's not as easy or as quick, but it's fun. You can still dig through long boxes. You can still go to used bookstores. You can still go to cons. You can still get newsletters and do mail order stuff and meet with other collectors and network. But the market part of it, you can really do that efficiently now because of the internet. And I'm really happy about that because I would collect comics regardless, but I feel like my desire to invest and buy and sell and trade would be hampered without something like the internet there. So that's how I feel about that.
I think that that's fair. I think that also collector, I don't know, for me, I think most of us work some sort of day job, right? I mean, we're doing something, even if it's not, you know, definitely anyone who's on YouTube is doing other than doing things other than just collecting. So I like to collect in various ways. One of the ways that I like to collect is online. It's a completely different experience than going to a shop or going to a peddler's mall or a convention or anything like that. But you know what I can't do while I'm at work? That's go to a convention, a peddler's mall or a shop, or meeting a comic dealer in a dark alley, or you know, go through the drive-through picking up change trying to buy another book. I can't do that while I'm at work. So one way that I can still collect comics while I'm at work is on the internet. So, you know, when I am off work and I'm like at home or any other time, I'm very rarely searching for comics on the internet. You know, every now and then, but usually I'm just listening to eBay notifications go off on my phone all night. Books that I most of the time don't even intend to buy. Just books that I was interested in and wondered what they would sell for. So, I mean, so I get that definitely being a collector is different now for sure, but I don't think that, other than a lot of shops closing, obviously that's a thing. But other than that, I don't think that adding the internet portion to collecting, or as you were saying, to selling, you know, having it as an integral part to move things out of your collection, I think it adds more stuff. I don't think it really takes away from any of the other ways that people have been collecting. Definitely not the ways that I've been collecting.
It's definitely I'm all for the dissemination of information and the easy access of it. To me, that's always an advancement. You know, the more we know, the better we are, right? I mean, I don't think that ignorance is in any way, in shape, or form a good thing. Okay, like, you know, outside of, you know, traumas or things like that. But the thing that I sort of, when I saw this topic, right, as this has sort of narrowed the gap here between those lifelong collectors that have put a lot of time into reading and researching and networking, and those that really have like just a spur of the moment inspiration to buy a comic, right? Like, for example, when I was talking to Lawrence earlier, we were talking about comics that is not, the appearance or the key aspect is not apparent on the cover. All right. And so that's why I'm showing, you know, Avengers Annual 10 here. You know, it's not apparent, but we all know what this is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. DS just said it's $35. That's what he saw. He saw 35 singles in a poly bag.
All right. Well, first Rogue, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, we have things. I think Lawrence has a couple there too. He's going to show this one here, which is
first Nebula, right?
Right. There you go. All right. Some people are on the ball here. And then, of course, we have this one, which is not apparent on the cover, but everybody knows, including Bub.
First appearance of Wolverine.
First appearance of Wolverine, right? Well, you see, the information out there would say, to most people, would say, hey, it's 181. But it used to be, and I think Lawrence probably remembers the time when 180 was actually the more expensive comic by quite a bit.
Yeah.
You remember those, the early 80s? Even
and everybody decided 181 was the ticket.
Right, because it had the cover appearance and the whole bit, right? And then you have information like for something like this, okay? Again, looking at it, the casual person would never know anything is wrong or anything is different about this one. But if you look up at the price, it's a 35-cent cover, September 1977. That should be a 30-cent cover. We have a test market price variant. And this is the kind of information which is not readily available in the previous, when you were, you know, back in the 80s. But nowadays you can look up Champions or 15 price variant and there's going to be all kinds of hints for that.
Yeah, so pictures of it and showing the exact, you know, how the price should look and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You have pictures, you have articles. So it has narrowed the gap between, it's sort of like, we're now totally anachronisms, right? These old time collectors, right? Because we're no longer need to be that relevant. And now we have nuances, and I can connect dots that perhaps somebody couldn't do by just looking at something on the internet. And that's sort of what I still have, I still have merit. I still have something to add to the equation. But as far as just finding out dead copies of any one copy of a comic, anybody can do it. So it's narrowed the gap between us long-suffering, making long lines in con to get in and to talk to creators and mail order, where we had to wait sometimes weeks or months for these magazines, versus the instantaneous availability of information we have today. So those are the kind of things that I think that it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, because even for me, if I need to find out something, I don't want to have to send away for something and wait months. I want to be able to get that information as quickly as possible. But certainly it doesn't make those longtime collectors as relevant as they were previously.
Yeah, I can see that.
I agree.
I guess it's hard for me sometimes, Roger, and I know everyone collects different things for different reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some of us collect for the same reasons, right? Something's valuable, very expensive, or a good cover. Everyone agrees it's a great cover, whatever, a great storyline. But there are some things that have value because I guess they're a part of comic history, as opposed to any kind of nostalgia or just some intrinsic joy that they would give you, other than the knowledge that you have of it before you find it, such as the price variance. So how does someone even get the point where they're like, oh, you know what, I want to collect? I understand the collector's mentality where you just want to collect everything of a certain set, right? Definitely get that. But I don't really, unless there was some sort of real monetary value attached to it today. Like, I never hear of anyone saying, oh, well, I want to collect all the 35-cent price variants. I never hear that, other than you've already got them all, but I never hear anyone saying that that's what they're
30 cent. I have 30 centers. I do not have all the 35 centers.
Okay. Well, hopefully you will.
Star Wars is the only one you need, right?
What was that?
Isn't Star Wars the only 35-cent variant you need?
No, I only have about 6 or 7 35 cent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I do know 2 people who have complete sets though.
Well, I think that, yeah. And are they newer collectors or older collectors?
Nope. These are the same generation as Lawrence and I.
Yeah. So I think what happens is that like a measure of nostalgia for you, that you remember when when that price changed, and therefore it's important to you, or is it just because you know that there's a rarity factor in it?
A little bit of both. I collected. I can't speak for those other collectors, but I collected comics. I bought them off the newsstand, or the newsstand, or the rack in the LCS, depending how old it was. But although I did not live in a variant city, I was very closely tied to the era in which those price variants came out, and the test market aspect of it is what really kind of took me and said, "Wow, that's very interesting." That they use comic books and sort of amalgamated them with a marketing ploy, and because they are rare, 35-cent variants are very rare. Most of them, there are less than 25 known copies of them. Now, Star Wars 1 is kind of an exception because it was sold so much. Number 1 issue, movie, the whole bit. So there's probably more like 50 or 75. I haven't kept up on that in a while. But yeah, it's the nostalgia factor combined with the aspects that on the periphery of that, and that is the rarity and the marketing ploy or the marketing strategy that came with it, that really appealed to me.
Yeah, well, I can see that. So that's something that I guess it is a nostalgia kind of point for you, that it was important to you at the time that you were collecting. It was something that you noticed and that you were a part of, and so you kind of want to go back and collect them all. But now you see that it's hard. Like Jess was saying, the 35-cent Star Wars variant is going to be really hard to get now. Massively. You're going to have to really break a bank open or sell something, or funnel effort and money towards that. And then is it worth it to just satisfy nostalgia at that point, or is it kind of just another comic investment? Once other people have turned on to it, it's got to make it tougher.
Yeah. I picked up most of my 30-cent variants 15 to 18 years ago, when most of them for less than $5. So yeah, that's why it was the challenge of it at that point. Now that everybody and his brother knows about it, I would never start to down that rabbit hole, because it would be just way too expensive. And And because it's expensive, it wouldn't be worth it to me, because I have so many other things that I need to take care of responsibly that it just wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, and that changes, I guess, as a collector. You have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. I think everyone does, unless you're, like Diaz says, sometimes there's just a bunch of people who are just throwing out there, just have a crap ton of money and all this stuff, and it doesn't mean anything to them. But I think for the most of us, working regular jobs and trying to not let our hobby take over all our finances, then you definitely have to draw a line somewhere between what you wanted and what you're willing to settle for. For me, that line is somewhere around 2.5. That's that's about where I draw the line.
Yeah, this relates to part of the reason why I've become so heavy into the buying and the selling and the flipping, or however you want to characterize it, is because the only way to get some of these books is, the prices are so out of control. And not that they're out of control, but I mean, the demand is so high for a lot of this stuff that it drives the prices, because supply is what it is. They printed however many of a book in 1970. That's it. But the demand has skyrocketed with the exchange of information because of the internet, that prices have gone way up on some of this stuff. So it's sort of driven me to enter the sort of investing market. If you were just a collector before and you're, trying to get that 35-cent Star Wars variant, and when you find it, it'll be relatively cheap. That's not the case now. So if you are just still only collecting, the investing market and then the demand has jumped so much that it's tough to stay only in the collecting without joining the other part to sort of enhance your ability to continue to collect the stuff you like, because the dynamic has changed. I mean, these are collectible works of art from any era, whatever you're into. And when the demand goes up, the supply is always the same. The supply never changes on these books. I mean, there's however many there are, and that's it. And the demand goes way up, the prices go way up. And, I'm not perfect at it. I make a lot of mistakes, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But if I join the investing part of it, which I've learned has become really fun for me. I really enjoy it, which is not why I started it. I started as sort of work, and it was laborious to try to make money to keep up with the collecting part of it. But I've really taken enjoyment out of it, so I really enjoy it a lot now. But yeah, I mean, markets change, and it's interesting to see how collectors adapt their collecting style. Some of them, it just takes longer, and they're patient, and they put the hard work in, and they hit yard sales. And what Roger does, and it works. He just puts the time and effort in, and he's got the knowledge to do it. And some people, they just switch over to entirely on eBay. I know guys who only buy and sell basically on the CGC boards, never go to cons, and have massive books all the time. So it's interesting to see how the hobby evolves over time. But none of this is ruining the hobby. It's just evolving, and there's different aspects. It's new possibilities being opened up, and you've got to find your place in the hobby. Some people try to do one thing and it's not working, and then they complain about the rest of it ruining the hobby. You got to find your place. You got to figure out who you are as a collector, or where you are in the hobby, what you want to do, and then try to find your way to be able to maximize how you can get the most enjoyment out of that and get the most value, or whatever you're aiming for. It's just such a dynamic market and a hobby. It's fun. There's a lot to it, and it's ever evolving, and it's hard to keep up with. It really is.
Well, I agree. I think it is hard to keep up with. There's been a great comment in the chat. I'm trying to find it, but it's up there somewhere. And it's not Gray Man talking about humping sex robots and reading comics in 25 years. It's in response to that comment, which is, do you think that there'll be collectors in the classic sense of the word, as we see them now, or as we've seen them in the past, in the future? Or is that evolution that you're talking about, DS, is that something that is moving on? Lawrence was talking about how, he's in old school, or he is in that, kind of a diehard, seems almost resistant. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lawrence, but from what I gathered, you're saying that you're almost resistant to the newer, online. You don't like it. and you'd rather keep doing it your way, and it's what's fun for you.
Oh no, I don't.
Is that?
I don't dislike it. I found my way to do it, and that's what I do. I don't dislike it at all, and I have purchased them off the internet, and it's great. But, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just love going out for the hunt. Fine. The hunt is what makes it for me.
Yeah, good point.
And the internet hunting, which is a whole different beast, is cool, but it's just more fun when you walk into an old store and you smell the comics. Everybody knows about that. It's just like you can't beat it.
Well, do you guys think?
I'm done.
It's for all three of you. Do you guys think that when you come 25 years from now, I already know some collectors, DS, who have more stock. They have what I would call stock, not necessarily a collection. They have a small collection, let's say, when the majority of your books are for sale, or even if it's a book that you just bought and you're really excited about owning, and it is potentially for sale, not just for the right price, but for a good price, as long as you can make money on it, then I think that kind of changes you from a collector to a dealer. That's that trend. That's that tipping point. So I see a lot of people tipping that way, from collector to dealer, where, I have all this stuff, but it's for sale because there's something else maybe I want. But the things that I want number in the few, and the things that I have for sale number in the many.
Well,
go ahead.
Look, everything I have is for sale at the right price. Some are just lower prices than others, but I passionately love this art form. I absolutely love it. It is my top passion in my life, aside from like family and real life things. As a hobby, this is my top passion. I absolutely love comic book art. It is just, I love it. I mean, I don't need to explain to people in the chat or on the panel, how much I love it. You all totally agree with me. I love this art form. I love owning these books. I love buying and selling the books. I love having these books pass through my hand. I love gazing upon them. It's just, I love them. Now, that doesn't mean that, I'm not a collector, or what I'm doing is some less honorable than somebody who just buys and holds everything forever. I love it the same, but, I like to experience a lot of different books coming and going. There's some that I like more than others. I enjoy the challenge of finding something rare, and sometimes I have to sacrifice something else. Sometimes my tastes change all the time, and it's, there's always new books coming and going from my collection, but I still consider it my collection. And yes, almost everything is for sale, essentially, but it's still my collection, and I love all of them. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain to a collector who doesn't sell stuff. But it's not like a lot of the books I currently have that I absolutely love, I wouldn't have had I not sold other books that I absolutely love. And I'm able to get much bigger books that I love now than I had before because of the selling. So it's not that I just sell everything I get without regard to the pieces and what they are. There are big books on the horizon that I hope to get because I absolutely love them, and I've never owned one, and they're rare and they're awesome, and I really want them. And the only way for me to get there is to sort of work my way up in the collecting hobby. And so I sell a lot of stuff. I try to make profit. I try to do smart investing to be able to get art that I love. And in the meantime, I find it fun to acquire these things. I find it fun to sort of hustle and invest in them. And it's fun to go out and try to acquire things that I wouldn't normally, like right now, there's books I can't afford to get that are way beyond my means. It's a challenge for me to work to a point where I can get that. And it's every aspect of it for me is fun, and it all centers around my love for the art. So, it's an interesting dynamic, but every book in this room I consider my collection, and a lot of them will be gone soon, and new ones will come, soon after that. But all of these books are my collection. It's just that my collection is an ever-changing animal. It's an ever-evolving organism. It's just not static. But I have a collection of comics, that I will never get rid of my collection. I'll always have a collection. It just will be different from day to day. You know, the ones I'm showing here, these are all going to be gone in 30 days. But right now, these 4 are in my collection, and I really like them. I like them enough that that's what I put out for tonight. So, you know, it's just, if you have a passion for it, it's however you enjoy it is cool. And the information that's out there allows you to do that in so many different ways and combinations of ways that it's exciting to me. So.
Well, and going along with what you're saying, and I agree, and I still consider you a collector, of course, and I know that you also keep a collection of books that you would potentially, even if the right price would buy them, it's an overprice.
Yeah, I don't want to sell it price. I mean,
it's the I don't want to sell it price.
Some are longer term investments than others. Some are simple, quick flips. Some are year-long investments, and some are multi-year investments. I have books that I've had for 5 years. That's probably the longest back. I have books that I've had for 5 years that I don't plan on selling anytime soon. So are those more part of my collection than anything else? Not to me, but perhaps to some of you out there in the hobby, you might think those are part of my collection and these aren't. They're all equally part of my collection to me. Some are just here for a shorter period of time.
I think that's fair. And I appreciate you making that clarification. I think that that's what we're kind of asking. And one of the questions that I have is, do you think that that readiness of knowledge, that ability, that access to the quick information has pushed more people to see monetary value in their collection than ever before? You know,
are you asking me or?
I'm asking anybody, everybody. So like Lawrence, you know, when you've got a huge collection, right? How many books do you think you're sitting on right now?
I don't know, maybe just right around 60,000. I'm not sure.
Okay. So when you look at that 60,000 collection, I was at a shop not too long ago. Nice. It's a back issue shop. Great guy. And he says all the time, about 6 times a year, he runs everything under $3.99 is $1 sale, right? Actually, it's anything under $4.99 now. So anything under $5 basically is $1, right? And you can go through the back issue bins and pick up a ton of books for $1 each. He says, well, the way I look at it, he's sitting on well over 1 million comics in that room, right? In that shop.
Wow.
And if he sold everyone for $1, he's got $1 million in his pocket. And think what he could do with that. So when you're sitting on 60,000 comics, were you ever aware during the collection of that, say, 20 years ago, that those comics could potentially be worth so much later? And was it easy to know how much they're worth? Like, were you hunting things based on value, or just because you knew if you got it all, you'd have plenty that was valuable in the mix?
You know, value is in the beginning. Of course, I think this is with every comic fan collector. Value was never it. It was the stories, the art, and all that. But I sold my first collection and had to rebuild it. I sold it to buy me a Roadrunner so I could go pick up girls. And that's when I discovered I made the biggest mistake, because that's when I realized that these books is really worth a lot of money. And I thought I got a ton of money out of them because I got me a car with it. And so, you know, I know they're worth money. I know that some of them's going to go high, some of them's going to fall. But the stuff that I like, and I think Roger will agree with this, it's either going to be in the $3 box, the $1 box, or it's going to go who knows where.
Yeah.
That's why I don't buy too much new stuff, because it don't perk my interest. And the old stuff, yeah, you're going to pay to get it. But if you truly enjoy it, and like DS said, you can always sell it. If you want, you know, I got 60,000 books, and probably, you know, half of them is really worth having for an investor, and the other half is worth having for, you know, just to have them, just to read or enjoy them while you got them. Because, you know, my collection will probably never be sold because my grandson's going to get it. But if he does get it and sell it, he'll be set for a long time. and
You can say
I
for the
could
rest
probably
of its life,
sell it.
Lawrence, because
Well, I was going to say that the way everything raises up, you never know.
by the time that you achieve, you know, that age where you're no longer around, and he's going to be there, that's many years down the pike. And I know a little bit about your collection. He'll do very well.
Oh, he'll do well if he decides to sell it, but he's a hoarder like me. Basically, I'm a comic book hoarder. You want to know the truth about it? That's it right there. It's all out now. Anybody that's ever watched any of the videos I ever did, they should already know that.
Well, here's something interesting from my perspective when I have my comic seller hat on, my comic flipper dealer hat on, is that there are collections, there are guys out there that I call them black hole collections. And it's not a knock on them. It's just my description of their style. Stuff enters the collection and never leaves. And from my investing and buying and selling, that's bad for me, because anything they get, I need to get to it before them. Because if they get to it before me, I'll never see it again. It'll be stuck in that collection forever and be passed on to a grandson or something. So, you know, there's two different styles of collecting. And, you know, I think look, I like to enjoy this art, and why not build some solid value while I enjoy it? And I'm able to enjoy it in more of a transient way, where I don't need to keep a book forever to enjoy it. I can have new books all the time, and it's just as enjoyable to me. But if you enjoy filling out runs and completing them and adding more and more to your collection, then selling is not going to be fun for you. It's going to give you a lot of anxiety. And you know, they're not, you know, Roger and Lawrence, you guys won't do it for the money, and that's perfectly fine. The money is important to me because I see the value of these as sort of commodities as well. So my passion for them is paired with my love for the value of them going up and trying to invest and work the value up. So it's just a sort of a different take on it. And, you know, you throw all these people in the mix and you throw them all at cons and all into the auctions and all on eBay and all on YouTube. You get every kind of collection style out there, all mixing together. And it makes for a richness in the hobby that I think some people don't appreciate when they say that one thing or another is hurting the hobby. There's a richness to it, and it's dynamic, and it has a lot of facets, and you can find your way and your spot, and you can experience a lot of different things in the hobby. None of them are ruining the hobby. They just might not be for you. And you can see Lawrence and Roger's style is way different than mine, but I think the three of us have an equal love for the art form. So it's interesting. I like to hear the different points of views on everything.
I agree. This is fun. I think that part of what makes it rich is that it's a little bit of that, I don't want to call it angst, but it seems like a lot of collectors develop a chip on their shoulder for the other types of collectors. And I think it's because in this community, it is very rich and it is very diverse, the way that people collect and the way that they cherish and display even or keep, and you know, Mylar versus polybag, raw versus slab.
Oh, let's not get into the Mylar thing again.
I don't want to, but what I'm saying is that I think that those debates are so like polarizing for a lot of collectors that it becomes an us or them kind of feeling. And sometimes some collectors feel like other collectors or flippers or whatever are infringing on their rights or altering the hobby that they've loved before this new breed of collector came about. And I think that I enjoy that richness. I enjoy that. I'm something of a centrist, so I really enjoy it because it's kind of fun to watch the two other sides fight all the time. I'm sitting here and I've got Mylar and polybag and slabs and raw, and I keep books and I sell books, and you know, it's like I like to do all the things that are in the hobby for the most part. The only thing I haven't done is set up at a convention yet, and I'm eyeballing one in January. So to me, that's fun. You know, how could it not be? You know, it's another part of the hobby to enjoy.
Yeah,
a lot of people feel like for someone else to enjoy the hobby differently than they do, somehow it's taking something from them. And when we're dealing in things that in some cases are rare and scarce, you can see how that comic as a commodity, as an item that two people or more are after, it can get a little competitive and it can get a little aggressive sometimes, and people get real defensive about the way that they collect versus the way other people collect. How someone is ruining what they've loved all this time. So I see it. I see it. I don't think it's a particularly pretty side of it, but it is kind of fun to watch people get so worked up over what, to me, I think DS, you said too, the hobby's big enough to accommodate all types of collectors, I think.
Yeah, the only thing that fires me up, that gets me angry in the hobby, and this is based on my passion for the art, is when somebody purposefully defaces art and in an attempt to get more money out of it, or to trick somebody into getting money, or even if it's not a trick.
Signatures.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get angry at people who get signatures, but that's how I feel about signatures. But like, there's some people that will purposefully deface a work of art for a monetary gain. They'll color touch a book and sell it on eBay unscrupulously to get more money and say it's a higher grade. That angers me. I find that to be unethical. I find that pisses me off to no end, because they are defacing art, and they're doing it in a sort of a dirty way that I hate that. And it goes, I don't like to have restored comics in my collection, but there is a place for comic restoration and conservation and all that, and that doesn't anger me. I try to not have them in my collection, but I don't get mad when somebody restores a book. But when there's some people out there unscrupulously defacing these works of art for monetary gain in an unethical way, just my personal belief that it's unethical, but it's so far askew that angers me. But other than that, I don't get annoyed with anybody's collecting style, or if they want to refuse to call me a collector, yeah, that's cool. You can call me a flipper, a speculator. Those are naughty words in the hobby. I don't care. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I've been called pretty much everything. Flipper and speculator is the least of it, so it doesn't really faze me. But the only thing that bothers me is when I see people deface art for monetary gain. I will never do that. And it's not like once you deface a copy or ruin a copy of a book, that copy is ruined forever, and it's one less unruined copy out there. These are works of art to me, and that's the only thing that angers me. So I just throw that out there.
I was with Dr. Von Schiller, and he was calling them artifacts, and I kind of agree with you. And they are like artifacts, piece of work. It's just like having an original Van Gogh or something. You're not going to deface that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like if Van Gogh did irises or sunflowers or Starry Night, but instead of just doing the one, he did like 50,000 of them, and that's it. And now you can get a copy of Starry Night that he did, but once somebody purposefully defaces that in order to get monetary gain, that copy is ruined, sort of. And it's like that to me. These are works of art, and part of why I like to put them in slabs. It's a nice frame for the art, really. And yeah, it's works of art. I consider myself to have an art collection, and I sort of buy and sell art. That's really the most accurate description in my mind, of what I'm doing.
Yeah, we are essentially curators of our collections, and we organize. Some of us, have equipment to press and clean. Like Bub had a really good video on cleaning and pressing that Hulk. Was it a 181 that you did there, Bub?
181.
Yeah.
Second appearance of Wolverine.
Second appearance, very good. Thank you. I'm glad that you are on board. And I thought that was a really good video. I learned a lot from it. I would never. I am a coward when it comes to those kinds of things in my comics. I'm a little shaky now that I'm older, so I would never attempt that. But yeah, what I'm saying is that if there were people that had diverse ways of collecting, then if everybody was a hoarder collector like Lawrence and I, that it's locked in our collections and never goes anywhere, then that would be a sad thing, because that the hobby wouldn't grow. So we need people like DS that has a more transient collection, and people like Bub, who every once in a while will take things over to his LCS to sell and things like that, because that keeps the hobby dynamic. If all of us were just had our collections and that's where they stayed and nothing else happened, you know, it certainly would be a much more lonely kind of process. And again, how would we acquire comics at this point? They're all out of print, you know, the old ones, unless there are some dealers and some people that find them and redistribute them. So yeah, I don't have any problems. I think that the diversity in collecting is an important aspect of the community, because we all have different perspectives, and because of that, we have different ways that we manage our comics. Some of us have them temporarily, and some of us, I've had some of mine for 40 years. So I think there's no wrong way of doing it. And in fact, I think it's a good and healthy thing to have so much diversity, both of how you curate your collection and also the dynamics of how it is that you acquire and let go of your collections. That I think is a perfectly great way of growing the community.
Yeah, and there's another thing about collectors. Like, it's cool. It's really cool to say, I have the full ASM run. I've got ASM 1 through, let's say 1 through 300. And you can show them all off and you have them, and there's a satisfaction to owning those. Or even just the ASM 300, that's a grail for you. You finally got it. I've got the ASM 300, you're happy to have it. And then you want to hold it and continue to be happy that you own that forever. And that's cool. I've owned several copies of ASM 300, and I don't have any right now. But I feel just as satisfied in the ASM 300 arena because I have owned it. I have had a copy. I've read through it. I've had it in my hands. It's been in my collection, and I've treasured it. And then I've moved it on, and I have room to treasure something else now. So, yeah, I mean, even the dealers at cons they're flippers, but they love these books too. If you ever just talk to these dealers at cons about the books, they'll tell you how much they love this book. They remember what lot they got this one in, especially if it's bigger books. They know how much they paid for it. They're like, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite covers, and it's for sale. And they'll get another copy and sell it, and get another copy and sell it. Well, if it's one of their favorite covers, why do they keep selling it? Because they love it, so they keep buying it, and then they keep selling it, and they enjoy it. And it's, you know, it's however you enjoy it. But I mean, you know, these 4 books are going to go off to people who will treasure them more than I do. And none of these are the first copies I've owned, and I'll try to get more copies because people dig them, and I can make money on them. And yeah, they're cool. I mean, these are good books, and somebody's going to get them off me that will treasure them. So, you know, am I ruining the hobby? Not to the person who's going to get these books.
No way.
They're going to be happy because I'm going to give them away cheaper than they can get other places, but high enough that I can make a decent profit, and somebody will really dig them. So, you know, it's all.
I tell you, well, one of the things that I like too now, whether you're a flipper or not, to me, when you're flipping something, you know, let's say you're flipping a house, right? Well, classically, if you're flipping a house, you're not buying a house that is perfect and then selling it tomorrow for just a little bit of money. There's work, there's investment, and then there's work that needs to be done to maximize profit potential, right? So now that you're cleaning and pressing books, that to me is work that deserves compensation. You're not just taking a book from one person and handing it to the next person. You're in some way making, even if it's just taking better pictures of it for eBay, even if it's just caring for it or packaging it better than you got it when it came to you, you know.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
there's some improvement.
It's not just that; it's the work. It's, you know, having, you know, putting the money out there. There's a risk.
Oh, he's back.
There's time involved. I mean, I'm expending a lot of resources to bring these books to market, and it's not just that I bought it off eBay and I'm selling it on eBay for a higher price. There's some time involved. There's work involved. There's study involved. I mean, I spend out, you know, 20 hours at least a week working on my comics, essentially, and it has nothing to do with sitting here staring at cool covers. And, you know, I'm learning how to clean and press. That takes time, and there's a risk. You know, you buy a book, there's a risk. Maybe it's not what the seller said. Maybe it's got a clipped coupon. Maybe the condition is going to get destroyed during shipping. Maybe the book will not be worth what I thought when I get it, and it drops, or, you know, any number of things. There's a risk. There's my time and effort involved, and it's work, which I enjoy doing for the payoff. So it's not like flippers are just buying books and then turn around and sell them for a profit. There's risk, there's time, there's study involved. I mean, you can't do this without studying up and reading up. And yeah, it's enjoyable, But I'll tell you, there's a lot of times I sit in this room and I feel like I'm at work, and I'm like, man, I got to get through this because I'm really exhausted and I'm tired of working on this, and I'm gonna try to get this done so I can go do something enjoyable with the rest of my night. That's sometimes how I feel. Now, it's satisfying work, but there's work involved. It's not, if you're selling comics like at my level, which is sort of a low to moderate level, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's not, people who don't do it don't realize it's not an easy thing to buy and sell comics on a regular basis. It's a lot of work, man, and it involves a lot of risk and time and money.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing that factors in is that when I work on a book, even a book that I know that I intend to sell at some point, it doesn't happen too often. Usually I buy a book for myself and then I see what I can do to improve it. And then when I'm done with that, it either means something to me or it doesn't. And sometimes the work that I do on the book gives me an attachment to the book that I never want to get rid of it, you know, because it's like a masterpiece of cleaning or a masterpiece of pressing. I never thought I would get this thing pressed right. And just getting the money for it may not mean as much to me as keeping the book and having that memory. I'm actually build memories with some of these books, and it makes it harder to sell some of them, especially the ones that are doubles and triples. And, I'm going to sell those at some point. So I might as well clean them up, make them look good, and get them prepared for the next person to own them. Because a lot of people don't own a press because that's an investment. They don't know, they don't have the time to clean a book or have the knowledge or the courage in some cases to clean the book. So it's me putting a piece of myself into the book while it's in my collection and it's in my possession, then offering that to someone else.
All that's risky too, because cleaning and pressing is not without risk. I have damaged books during both of those processes, and I've gotten better at doing it. But if you don't just clean a book and it goes smoothly. I mean, sometimes I'd be erasing too close to the edge and catch it, and it tears a little bit, and I'm like, damn it. And there's a risk even to that stuff. But yeah, I get personally invested in a book that I work on and I read through it. I'm so involved with for several days. And then when I go to ask $500 for it, people think I'm crazy. And I'm like, man, they don't realize how awesome it is. And I can't get that. It's that awesome to me because I've been dating it for a week and I'm in love with it. You know what I mean? I'm so personally invested in it. And I spent so much time going over every inch of it and working on it that it's worth so much more to me. So I just put it back in the box, and hopefully one day it will be worth what I think it's worth. And I have books like that.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, guys, it's getting late. It's 20 minutes past the hour. I don't know if anyone noticed or cared, but we didn't have Why No Faces this week because no one volunteered. No one volunteered last week, and I think I ran through all the volunteers from prior weeks. So unless someone wants to volunteer for next week, it'll be just a flash in the pan moment for the show. So if anyone wants to be part of the Why No Faces, it's where you give us permission to go through some of your past videos, and then we put you on the drug pause, and we see if we can get the most unfavorable picture of you possible. So that's where we're at on that. So unless somebody wants to volunteer for that, or someone I may have forgotten volunteered, it's hard to go back through the chats because a lot of it kind of gets deleted when you do the replay.
Kavi, Comic Books NYC.
All right, he wants to be on No Faces. Okay, we'll give it a shot. It's gonna be tough because he's kind of all the way below his desk, like he should. Like in his videos, it's just like a hat and headphones.
It's a hat, some eyes, and a nose and a mouth. Yeah. That's a challenge for you, Bub. That's a challenge.
It's gonna be a tough one. So we'll give it a shot and see how that goes. If anyone wants to volunteer, just put it in the chat, and I'll do it. Also sounds like fun. Okay, Splash Page Comics is down. You guys help me remember when next week rolls around. Make sure I've got one of those in at least. So anyway, thank you guys. Used to be a No Faces channel. Yeah, when we started this chat, my idea was just that I wanted to have a bunch of people. Everyone kind of starts off with the No Faces because they're scared. A lot of people are scared, or in DS's case, just extremely sketchy. Didn't want to get matched up to any milk cartons or wanted posters around the country. So
I just thought he didn't want Mrs. Diaz to know what he was up to.
That could be as well. It talks about how much he paid for a book.
Yeah.
I think
that has been a challenge. That's one of the biggest challenges I faced is an acclimation of her to higher and higher prices.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a tough one.
Hey, my wife is 100% Jungle Beauty, right? She's absolutely, she speaks the lingo. I can show her a book and ask her what's wrong. She uses all the right terms, and will spot things I missed. So it's like having a second pair of eyes out there. And whenever I'm going to buy a book, I have her look at it first.
Yeah,
just as a team effort, and it really works out well.
Nothing gets the significant other interested in your collecting as much as selling books and giving them some money from it, and it's all of a sudden.
Hey, ask Lawrence about his wife.
Lawrence, can you hear me? I don't know if he has audio. He might have stepped away too. He's got a lot going on at home.
But his wife has probably one of the premier horror collections out there. Oh, there he is.
You there, Lawrence?
Something happened. Yeah.
Yeah, he may have stepped away. He said he might have to step away a couple times. She's got a lot going on at home.
She's a collector of horror comics. And I've talked to her a few times, and she's got a huge collection of Dracula, House of Secrets, House of Mystery, all those old horror comics. Not from the Golden Age, but from the Silver Age up. And Lawrence is always trying to, whenever he finds something for his collection, he has to give it to her first if it's a horror comic.
I noticed that in some haul videos, and when the videos he shows, he's always like, well, I tried to get this book, but it goes to her, or in some cases she saw it first, so it's definitely hers, right?
Yep.
And he thought he had a copy, but he didn't, so now he still doesn't have a copy.
Yeah, but 9 times out of the 10, if he finds it, she needs it, it goes to her collection, not to his.
See, thankfully, Jungle Beauty does not collect comics. And I'm actually, at first I tried to get her into it, and like, well, why don't you start a collection? She had a small Archie collection going. But actually, I kind of like that she doesn't collect comics, because it means she still spends money on her own things that she likes to do. I spend money on the things I like to do, and she can appreciate it without actually, changing it. You know what I mean? Like,
what's the favorite comic of yours that you have? Which one does she like the most?
She loves the Rifleman log cover.
Oh, okay.
She was a Dracula fan, so she likes my Tomb of Dracula 1 signed by Neil Adams. And of course, the commission that I had Bud Root do for her. You were there, DS, at the con when we got that done. She loves that.
Yeah,
that was cool.
And it's a picture of her, basically. So it worked out really well that there's a lot of comics, and anything that she likes really well, I get to put in her corner of the room. So. Like
more space.
She's got First Batgirl up there. She's got, you remember my journal, my ladies' home journal that's got the first Wortham articles in it.
Yeah.
So that's in her side of the room. And anything female oriented, like the first She-Hulk and stuff like that, that's all like around her treadmill as motivators for her when she's running. Hey, she's the one that said it. She was like, "Wow, I had a Tomb Raider #1 up there in a little slab," and she was like, "I like that one. She said, that's a good motivator." I'm like, "Yeah, me too. I'm working out." Looking at that too.
Yes, is not really into most of the ones I have, but I know her favorite one is Chamber of Chills 19. That's the favorite book of mine that she likes. So she's got good taste. She just doesn't. It's sparing. She doesn't like a lot of them, but the ones she does like are high end things. So that's good.
Wow, I like that. She picked something expensive.
Yeah, I mean that's one. Yeah, exactly. And that one, actually, you guys know that was the only restored book I had in my collection. That's currently out getting the resto removed, not at CGC. I don't ever use them again for this stuff. But another
get your cover removed by them, won't you?
Huh?
They'll remove the restoration and your cover.
Exactly. They'll remove the resto, the front cover, the back cover. Yep.
Wow.
So yeah, and you know, I tried to get a conversation with them. I wanted to talk to one of the head guys there, and my emails were basically I was basically told in so many words, he doesn't have time to talk to you, but you can send it to us and we'll work on it. And so that was my last ditch effort to sort of repair that bridge with them. And their response was basically they didn't care and they don't have time to talk to me. And I'm not the biggest client in the world, but you know, I'm a customer and I have big books I want them to work on, and they couldn't even. So that was my last ditch effort. Didn't get a response that they would even be willing to talk to me about it. So I'm not using them anymore for anything. And I started pressing on my own anyway. And you know, there's other people that will do the more professional work. I don't need CCS to do it. It was convenient, but if they're not going to give me the time of day, and when they did do the work, they were ruining books of mine. I'm done with them. So.
Yeah, me and Jungle Beauty were watching one of your videos on the big screen the other day, where you were, you know, having a little time with CGC. We had realized that you went from being a CGC apologist to a CGC optimist to a CGC realist. That's all. And that's all happened in like the span of a year.
Yeah, I mean, I still send books to them, and the Newton ring thing is starting to wear thin on my nerves. But the CCS part of it, I'm done with. I don't support that anymore. And if anybody asks me about it, I would recommend they not use them based on my experiences. You know, I'm not going to go out there and be like, they suck, they're terrible. My experiences have been poor with CCS, and I won't use them anymore. And I'll be open about that to anybody that asks me. That's my point of view on CCS. And you know, there's other people out there. I can clean and press my own books. Yeah, I'm not perfect, but I'm getting, you know, decent results that's good enough based on the time and money I'm saving, that I don't need to be as perfect as a professional might do based on the time and money that it's saving me. It's much more rewarding financially and just personally. But the resto removal type stuff, there's plenty of other professionals that will do it. And, you know, they're too. The thing that's bugging me about CGC is they're becoming a PR monster. They're so wrapped up in PR and con visibility and stuff like that, that some of their services are really suffering to the point that it's really being noticed by collectors of some of this high-end art. And it's dangerous for them to ignore that, because all you need is somebody like CBCS to get their act together just halfway on some stuff, and CCS is going to be hurting. I mean, CBCS, all they need to do is get a decent holder that's as good as CGC's, and a whole new ballgame for CGC.
I agree.
They're
not far enough out of the game.
If CBCS's case was as good as CGC's, I would be using CBCS right now. That's the only thing stopping me from using them, and I would probably use both depending on the books or the turnaround times or whatever. But it's the holders is the only thing keeping me with CGC right now is the holders, and the Newton rings are endangering even that.
Well, do me a favor while you're muling some books for me this week. Pretend that you're not you. Just smile, hand them over, smile, and wait for them to come back.
Yeah, well, they won't know who I am anyway, and I will wait until I have yours securely back in the slabs before I shoot my mouth off. How's that?
That sounds good. I heard you last week or so talking about doing like a holiday and boycotting them and all this stuff. I'm like, oh man, he's gonna be holding up picket signs. He's gonna be holding up my book and saying, "Yeah, you're never gonna get this book."
No, I won't do it until after I get yours back. Yours
I appreciate it.
Before I cause any trouble. I don't stir the pot with somebody else's interests in mind.
Lawrence says that his device froze up, so he had to get off.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. He was having technical difficulties from the beginning, so that, and Roger flatlined on us a couple of times before we started. So it's been a rough technical.
I used CPR and I came back. Don't worry.
Do you know how it sounds when you go off?
No, I don't. No, just
it literally is the exact same sound of a flatline. Was it an EKG machine or what is that? It's whatever. Checks your pulse, right?
Yeah, but it's
when you're in the hospital.
Pitch and everything.
Electrocardiogram.
Yeah.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, that's it. It's the exact same sound. So when you unplug that mic, that's what it sounds like. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
Lawrence is back.
All right, guys.
Lawrence is back for the finale.
Welcome, Lawrence.
Hey,
So,
I'm back.
We're gonna hop off here.
My phone took a dump and I had to restart. Okay.
Well, you're just in time to say goodbye.
Yeah, while you're still up, why don't you give your goodbyes and thank you everyone who's in the chat. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Yes, I appreciate everybody that tuned. Am I still there?
Yeah, you faded out for a second.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you're there.
Yep.
Nope, he's out.
He's gone. Well, all right.
His connection is bad. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump off here because I hear Mrs. DS there pacing outside waiting for me. So.
Yeah.
All right.
And I got to park the dog.
All right. Say your goodbyes then. Get out of here.
All right,
everybody. Great chat. Great to be here. Awesome. We had 30 people at one point. So
nice.
Again, you guys are the superstars here. Thanks from the bottom of my heart. I'm out of here, but everybody remember to be blessed and be back next week. Bub.
All right. Remember, everybody, we'll catch you next week on the No Faces Comic Chat. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to our special guest, Lawrence. Thanks for our usual, very unspecial guests, DS and Roger. Oh, Roger's still here. Sorry. And we'll catch you next week on the No Faces Comic Chat. Don't forget to read a comic and don't apologize for the glare. Bye.